Ukrainian sovereignty and economic pressure on Russia, but also what Sir Keir called a coalition of the willing, countries that would work with Ukraine on a peace deal and potentially...
that Ukraine is the party of peace because he has agreed to and committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire.
Be part of some sort of peacekeeping force. Now, here are some of the European NATO leaders at the weekend. It's all happy families, but how many of this group are actually willing? Well, the makeup of the coalition is something that Keir Starmer is keeping fairly quiet about because it's an evolving initiative.
Now what we see, and this is centrepiece for our discussions today, is that Putin is the one trying to delay. And in a sense, and you all know this, if Putin is serious.
Keir Starmer walked into that press conference expecting to showcase Britain's strength on Ukraine. He walked out having received a direct missile threat from Russia that shocked even seasoned diplomats. The brutal public dressing down wasn't just about Starmer's peacekeeping proposal. It was a calculated move to expose Britain's weakened position and Starmer's inexperience on the global stage. The question now isn't just whether Starmer was humiliated, but whether his approach has put Britain in genuine danger. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What happened between Keir Starmer and Ivan Popof recently wasn't just an embarrassing diplomatic exchange.
It definitely includes the United Kingdom and France because it's their idea, and it likely also includes Italy and Canada and maybe the Netherlands and perhaps the small Baltic states. But beyond that, it's pretty uncertain. Spain has ruled out participation.
About peace, it's very simple. He has to stop his barbaric attacks on Ukraine and agree to a ceasefire. And the world is watching.
Germany cannot agree to such a commitment when it's in between chancellors. Poland has a pretty big army, but is clearly nervous that if it deploys a proportion of its forces to Ukraine, it'll be short of troops to declare any future.
And my feeling is that sooner or later he's going to have to come to the table and engage in serious discussion. But, and this is a big but for us,
it was a carefully orchestrated Russian power play that exposed the fundamental weaknesses in Britain's current foreign policy approach. When Popof, a key member of Putin's United Russia party, addressed Starmer's Ukraine stance on Russian state television, he wasn't simply responding to British rhetoric. He was delivering a masterclass in international intimidation. The calculated nature of Popof's critique reveals much about Russia's approach to international relations. Speaking with the cold precision that characterizes Putin's inner circle, Popof didn't just dispute Starmer's position, he eviscerated it while simultaneously issuing what amounts to a thinly veiled threat of military action. His chilling declaration that British troops will be direct targets for our missiles wasn't merely defensive posturing. It was a strategic message designed to undermine Starmer's authority on the global stage. What makes this exchange particularly revealing is the power imbalance it exposes. Starmer has been attempting to project strength through tough talk on Ukraine, suggesting Britain might consider deploying troops as peacekeepers. But Moscow clearly views this as the desperate flailing of a diminished power trying to reclaim relevance. The Russian political establishment sees Starmer as woefully out of his depth in the realm of great power politics, a novice playing a dangerous game without understanding the rules. Popov's remarks weren't just aimed at Starmer personally. They were calibrated to remind all Western leaders of Russia's willingness to escalate tensions if pushed. This strategic messaging serves multiple purposes. It reinforces Russia's image as a formidable nuclear power, it isolates Britain by highlighting its apparently reckless approach, and it creates divisions between NATO allies by forcing them to either endorse or distance themselves from Starmer's aggressive stance. The timing couldn't have been more devastating for Starmer, who's already facing criticism at home for seemingly prioritizing international affairs over domestic issues. Popov's intervention makes Starmer appear not just inexperienced but potentially dangerous, a leader whose tough talk could have catastrophic consequences for British security.
Russian aggression attack elsewhere in the north. So the UK will be a key participant, but of its available forces, there would likely be only about, say, 5,000 on the ground at any one time, and there needs to be 3 times as many troops to be available.
This morning in our meeting, we can't sit back and simply wait for that to happen. We have to keep pushing ahead, pushing forward, and preparing for peace.
For whatever number is deployed. So, depending on the involvement, the RAF could play a part. Britain's Typhoons and F-35 fighter jets will be a real asset. but there are only a handful of squadrons of each of those.
And a peace that will be secure and that will last. And I think that means strengthening Ukraine so they can defend themselves, and strengthening, obviously, in terms of military capability.
The Russian calculation here is brilliantly simple. By responding with such overwhelming force to Starmer's rhetoric, they transform what was intended as a show of British strength into evidence of British weakness. Moscow's perception of Starmer as attempting to regain influence that Britain no longer possesses cuts to the heart of post-Brexit Britain's identity crisis. Since leaving the European Union, the UK has struggled to define its role on the world stage. Starmer appears to be doubling down on a version of British exceptionalism that Russia clearly views as delusional, a failure to recognize Britain's diminished standing in the global hierarchy. Perhaps most concerning is how Starmer's nuclear deterrence rhetoric has backfired spectacularly. When a relatively new leader starts talking tough about nuclear options while addressing a country with the world's largest nuclear arsenal, it doesn't project strength, it projects recklessness. Russia's response effectively highlights the dangerous game Starmer is playing, reminding Britain and its allies of the potentially catastrophic consequences of miscalculation when nuclear powers are involved. The geopolitical chess match being played here extends beyond this